The courtyard wasn't supposed to be empty, especially not this time of year. The Garu New Moon Festival usually brought visitors from around the world and from across multiple star systems right about now, but the disease meant no bright banners were hung. No music echoed cheerily through and around the corners and down the streets. There were no wafting scents of fresh fruits and fried breads. It was amazing and terrifying that something so small that it couldn't be seen had done all this. It was assumed that Ni immune systems were among the best in the galaxy, and other races had even requested to study how they were so effective. Those prideful memories felt hollow now as Andu pulled herself away from the dreary sight outside. As a new and reluctant head of the house, she had more pressing things to deal with than moping in the past. Several members of her own family were still sick. 2 of her hatchmates had been very touch and go as of late. She slowly made her way to the cushions where they were sleeping to check on them. To her relief, she saw the soft blankets they were wrapped in rose and fell slowly. She stood there, watching them for a bit in the gathering darkness of their shared humble abode. Mackie's breathing sounded like gravel stuck in a child's rolling skiffer.
What are we gonna do?
Andu's wide nose scrunched up as she begged the silent house.
What am I supposed to do next?
She wasn't sure how long she stood there trying to think of everything and nothing all at once. It was a good while, though, and only interrupted when a small light turned on in the meal room. Andu looked up at the light streaming out of the door's archway. With a sigh, she gathered her strength to move again to see who was up. As she approached, she heard small claws scrabbling around on the stonework floor and storage pods opening and closing. Sure enough, when she peeked in, Andu could see little Piri shuffling through food storage pods that looked even less stocked than she thought they'd been. There were a few bottled foods and a few containers of ingredient-prepped soup containers, but certainly nothing immediately ready for consumption. Ready-to-eat foods had been eaten long ago, or destroyed when they began to decay and grow dangerous molds. And to a small 3-year-old Ni, that basically meant there was no food at all.
Hey, Piri, you hungry?
Even though Andu had kept her voice quiet, little Piri still jumped and tucked his small thin tail like he was ashamed he'd been caught.
It's okay, you're fine. I think it's time for a meal too. I'm sure everyone else would agree once they wake up and smell the food.
Andu smiled comfortingly and stepped into the room to pick up one of the soup packs.
There's not much left.
Piri's small voice was so sad, and only made the words themselves feel sharper to Andu's hearts. She tried to think of something she could say to make their situation seem less dire, but nothing came to mind. Instead, she scooped up Piri's small form and waited until his thin arms latched securely around her scruff before she walked over to get a pot to cook in. She was going to have to add quite a bit of water to this if it was going to make enough for everyone. Cooking, even making something simple, helped ease Andu's mind. There was a sense of normalcy in standing in front of a firebox and stirring a bubbling pot of soup. She tried to ignore how thin it was. Still, the smell made her feel warm, and it must have wafted across the house as she could soon hear the telltale signs of her hatchmates waking up. She gathered bowls and filled each one. Lowering Piri back down, she handed the young Ni a bowl and carried the rest to the cushions where the rest of the family was waking up. They ate together slowly, trying to make the contents of their bowl last, and talking quietly about anything they could to distract themselves from their situation. Mackie was recalling a story from 4 lunar years ago when Andu had entered a fried bread pastry into a competition.
I did like eating all the attempts up to the
Between
festival.
Mackie's coughing and Andu's interjection to defend herself, the story kept getting interrupted. She'd worked on that recipe for her pastry for so long, and she was so proud of it. But the night before, something went wrong when she was making her entry. Whether it was nerves, exhaustion, oversight, or gentala above forbid, sabotage, it went very wrong. From the way Mackie described the judge's reaction, one might have thought Andu had purposely tried poisoning them. As everyone chuckled, Mackie claimed he still had the video recording from the competition and pulled it out, much to Andu's chagrin. Andu pretended to be exasperated by the teasing, but really, she was just glad everyone felt good enough to laugh again. It took a while before she and the others noticed that Mackie hadn't pulled up the video. Instead, his eyes locked on the comm tablet screen.
Mackie? What's going on?
Mackie, are you okay?
They're coming to help.
Who are you talking about? Who's coming?
Mackie tapped something on screen with the pad of a finger, and a holographic projection display rose up. Everyone watched enraptured by the newscast. It was about humans. From halfway across the galaxy, they'd heard about the news plight and had come claiming they had a cure. They were offering aid and resources to run tests and make sure their medicine was safe and effective for new use, and make alterations to it if needed. They were even claiming they'd help distribute the finalized cure the moment it was given the go-ahead. In the meantime, they were also sending ships of food and supplies. Andu could feel the back of her throat tighten. Was this real? Did she dare hope? There'd been so many reports about help being promised. Well, not help to this extent, but help nonetheless. They'd ended up just being for show and were proven empty once those who offered realized how impossible the situation was. But humans? She'd heard they were tough and stubborn. Maybe they were stubborn enough to see their promises through. The embarrassing video of Andu's failed pastry was long forgotten. The conversation instead jumped between wild rumors her family had overheard about humans and speculation about how long it would take for the humans to actually lend aid, if they were really coming at all. Andu could see a shimmer in the eyes of her hatchmates as they spoke that she hadn't seen in a while. Although she wished she could feel the same optimism, she could also see how quickly they were all tiring out. Once the meager meal was finished, she stood to gather the now empty bowls. She noticed Piri quickly scrape a finger along the side of his bowl to snag any last morsel before she came along to collect it.
Gentala above,
She prayed mentally.
if help truly is coming, send it along soon.
With bellies no longer empty, everyone settled in, and soon the room was full of sleeping or near-sleeping knee. Andu slept fitfully. She dreamed, but it was fractured and confusing. Even before the disease came, she had a hard time remembering her dreams once she woke up. It was near impossible now. She did remember a loud humming noise, though. And as she blinked her eyes and lifted her head, she realized the humming was still there. She rose and searched for the source. It almost sounded like engines? But that had to be impossible. The quarantine... She looked out the window. Dried sickle leaves were flying around wildly as a large shuttle slowly came in for a landing in the courtyard. Apparently, it managed to wake up Piri, who nearly made Andu jump when he bumped into her side while trying to climb up for a better view out the window.
What's going on? Who's outside?
I'm not sure yet.
They both watched the shuttle's door slowly work through the unsealing process. Across the courtyard, she could see other Nee's faces peeking out of their windows. As far as she could tell, expressions seemed to range anywhere from fear to curiosity to... Was that hope? Had they seen the newscast last night? Did they think this was... There's no way the humans could be here already, right? They both watched intently as the doors finally opened and a ramp extended. Soon, a line of creatures she'd only seen on screens filed down, wearing yellow vests and hauling huge boxes in their arms or on carts they pulled behind them.
It is the humans.
Piri yelled and jumped down from his perch. He ran to where everyone was stirring on the cushions.
Wake up! Wake up! The humans are here.
Andu wasn't sure if she should reprimand Piri for disturbing them or if she should join in. Instead, she watched as the humans in the courtyard started setting up stations and continued hauling load after load filled with what must have been hexaheaps of food, clean water, and various supplies. She turned to look back at her family, who were trying to rise as fast as their weakened bodies would allow. Matke began coughing violently and had to support himself against the wall. Andu went to help support him when a knock at the door startled everyone. They all stared at the old Chirowood door, then around at each other. It had been so long since quarantine had started, they'd almost forgotten what a knock on the door sounded like. After a pause, the knock came again, this time followed by a worried and drawn-out,
"Hello?"
Once she was sure Matke was standing stable, Andu, being the least sick among everyone, walked to and slowly opened the door. A human from the shuttle stood in the doorway. They were wearing a mask over their mouth and nose, but it was definitely a human.
Good evening. My name is Des. I'm part of the relief team that's been assigned to this district. We've got food and essentials to distribute, and I just need to know how many are in this household and if anyone's here in critical condition.
Andu blinked at the human for a moment as she took in what they'd said.
We have 3 adults and 1 child. There were more, but
She couldn't finish that last sentence. From the look the human gave her, she didn't need to finish it. Her sinuses stung as she fought not to cry. The first visitor in how long? And here she was crying in the doorway.
I'm so sorry for your loss. I wish we could have helped earlier. Is there anyone here in need of immediate emergency care?
At that point, Mackie started coughing again, back to see him sit back down until his coughing died down.
None of us are great right now. Mackie's probably the worst out of all of us. He sounds bad, but he actually has started to stabilize in the past few days.
The human gave a short nod and started writing something on a tablet in their hands.
Do you... We heard a report last night about you. That you were coming. That you... Do you really have a cure?
Yes, we do.
Andu didn't need to turn around to know the effect that had on her family. She heard it. She felt it. This time, she didn't fight back the tears.
Right now, it's in the final stages of approval for knee use. We're just waiting for the go-ahead, and we'll help distribute it as soon as it arrives. Until then, I've got some food and some supplies for you. I can help you unload and unpack if you need.
That would be... Thank you. Thank you so much.
Over the next few days, more shuttles came and went, bringing more supplies, food, tools, and, in general, a brighter outlook and mood to the entire neighborhood. The humans really were here to help, and they seemed happy to do so. Not only were they good with their promises of aid, but they also delivered on the cure they said they had. Ni were instructed on the drug's use and administration directions thoroughly for both the tablet and liquid forms of the cure. The effects were quick, and from the reports on the newscast, overwhelmingly positive. The Ni were cured. The plague that had once threatened to wipe out their entire population was gone. Celebrations larger than even the Garuni Moon Festival were planned, songs were written, stories were shared and spread. It was wholly agreed on by all that this was a historic time in Ni history that they had all survived through, and all thanked Gentala above for sending the humans to help. It went without saying that everyone wanted to know more about the cure itself. And that meant everyone, not just the Ni, but the rest of the galactic community, who, before, had written the Ni off as a lost cause because of the horrific disease. What was this miracle cure? What other things could it do? Where, by all that is bright and shining, did the humans get it? And could it be easily replicated? The humans, for their part, were again as open and gracious with their information as they had been with their aid. It was an old medicine they discovered long ago on their planet. Considered to be the first antibiotic, it was widely used on Earth and had saved millions of lives since its discovery. It worked by interfering with bacteria cell walls and destroyed them by causing them to burst. It was called penicillin.
Amazing.
Spectacular!
So simple, yet so ingenious.
However did you discover this amazing drug?
The initial answer wasn't too surprising, for humans at least. It was an accident. Andu almost snorted as she read the report to the rest of her family. Granted, the end of the plague was the first time any of them had come into direct contact with humans, but they all had heard many of the stories about human escapades. Wild experiments that on paper seemed more like drunken brainstorm parties that ended up advancing rocket fuel technology by at least 8 lunar years. Crash landings on Category 3 death worlds, and they ended up liking them so much that they decided to set up colonies. Half of what they did seemed to be mistakes that just went right for them. Apparently, the miracle drug penicillin was included in those stories. She looked up its history in manufacturing. Andu felt claws dance down her back as she read more. It came from mold? She looked up from the tablet to the faces of her equally horrified hatchmates. It took them a moment to remember how to close their mouths.
You mean like mold on old bread?
Old bread. How many times had they not eaten bread fast enough in the warm, humid seasons, only to pick up a bowl of bread and find mold growing on it? It was dangerous. It had to be carefully disposed of. It was able to save lives. She returned to the report. The more she read, the more comforted she became in the safety of the miracle antibiotic. That, and she couldn't argue with the results. Her family was around her, loudly being altogether boisterous as they discussed humans and all their ways they played with death in order to save life. Mackie snatched the tablet from her claws, wanting to read the report for himself. As Andu was jostled by her now healthy, energetic family, she was just happy and eternally thankful that the humans were crazy enough to play with something as dangerous as fungus, and then kind enough to share what they discovered.
Oh, hi. I wanted to give a thanks to these lovely humans on screen for providing voices and giving life to my characters. You guys did a wonderful job, thank you. I also want to give a special thanks and shout out to Kronos and Lugified Lemon for their support on Coffee. May you always find drinking fountains that are cold and refreshing. And lastly, thanks for watching the video and for sticking around the end credits. And putting up with my voice right now, I've been sick for the past forever. So thanks for putting up with that. I hope you're taking care of yourself. You deserve that and so much more. Stay weird, you funky little human, and kind, and brave, and adaptable. I love you.